1 2 testing 1 2 1 2 testing 1 2 test 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 test 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 test 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 just an infinite loop. Don't know what that low buzz is. Strange. What that low buzz is. Strange. What that low buzz is. Strange. What that low buzz. Anyway, that works, so I don't mind. There is a bit of a buzz. Testing 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Testing 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Testing 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Testing 1 2 4 5 6 2 2 1 2. Testing, Susie Dent's mic 1 2 1 2.
Good evening. Oh, can we all hear me? Yes. Yay! Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. This is going to be such a wonderful Christmas treat, or should I say a pre-Christmas treat. We have had a lovely Autumn Literary Festival, and I can see some familiar faces in the crowds. Thank you so much for attending and coming out tonight again. Now, we have the most wonderful lexicographer in the world. We have Susie Dent.
Thank you. Emma, I always say at that point, how many lexicographers do you know? It's like my favourite lexicographer. I think, and then I realise not many people know any others. Well, anyway, thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, I met Giles the other day and I feel, oh dear.
There you go.
Right, shall we get right into your book?
Yes.
Where did we start? How did you start? I'm getting off into your book.
That is a very good question. So I'm so used to the question, how did you get onto Countdown? Because I was a lexicographer and, well, still am really. And my answer to that one is quite similar to my answer read the book, because as I always explain, I said no to Countdown for at least 3 or 4 times. I went to work for Oxford University Press, and they had an arrangement with ITV, who make Countdown for Channel 4, and they lent them sort of lexicographers to be the word referees. And I just thought, well, it's not really for me. I'm quite happy below the radar. And anyway, eventually I was persuaded. And it is very similar with the book in that my editor, Kelly, came to... she approached me and my lovely agent Rosemary and said, how about writing a mystery novel? And my immediate answer was, no thanks, because I've written so many non-fiction books and I've been so happy in that world, because I'm writing about words, I'm writing about language and dictionaries, and it's a world that I know very well. And obviously this wasn't one that I knew very well. But she was very persuasive, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought there are so many parallels between word detectives, which is how I see lexicographers, and real detectives. And so that started to click. And so at the second time of asking, I said, okay, actually, why not? I will probably never be asked again. And here we are.
I mean, what a smash hit it has been, though, for you. Like, your first debut novel, For the Crime, it's been incredible.
Thank you.
It's such an, I mean, this is my 3rd language personally, and I'm learning all these wonderful words. And I've got a list of them here, being conjobble and being one of my favourite ones.
Yes, conjobble. It's just have a good gossip over a bite to eat. There's just something that just sounds like you've got your mouth full and you're enjoying yourself, I think.
It really does, and I've been introduced into so many different words from just reading like the first 4 pages of your book.
Oh, thank you.
It was about 2 months ago when I opened it to start reading it for today, and I thought, oh, okay, and okay, let's keep going.
Oh, did you have a dictionary by your side?
No, I sort of had to wing it.
No, and actually, quite a lot of the words that I chose aren't in the sort of online dictionaries that you might quickly search a word up in, because I go to all these kind of obscure dialect glossaries and the Oxford English Dictionary, which is a historical dictionary, and that is my absolute favourite. So, I'm glad that you enjoyed them.
It was incredible. This book focuses a lot about Shakespeare's time, though, in terms of etymology. Should we talk about that a little bit and how we get into it?
Yes. So I have to be careful, though, because I'm assuming not many of you have read it. Is that right? Yes, okay. So I do have to be quite careful.
Oh, yes,
so there are references to Shakespeare, not least because the Oxford English Dictionary that I mentioned, which is the sort of the grand dam of all dictionaries. It is a vast undertaking with an army of not just lexicographers, but readers right across the world who send in evidence of words and the dates, etc. That relies very heavily, because it was started a long time ago. It relies very heavily on Shakespearean records, because a lot of the early editors of the Oxford English Dictionary were Shakespeare scholars, so they looked to Shakespeare's plays for the first record of particular words. And most of us have heard of, you know, of course, all the expressions that Shakespeare gave to the English language. It's all Greek to me, salad days, I mean, so many, hundreds and hundreds. But it's becoming very clear that actually not everything that we currently credit Shakespeare for was actually his, and that what he was doing, because he was a genius, was absorbing words from around him, often from women actually whose voices went largely unrecorded, and he was giving them voice. So although he did the most remarkable things with language, he probably wasn't the great inventor of everything that we currently credit him for. And so slowly that side of his reputation, I suppose, is changing, but his kind of exuberance with English isn't. So I wanted to explore that a little bit.
Well, Shakespeare, sorry, to circle back round again, Shakespeare's now said he didn't have the education and the means, given where he came from. And it's now, there's now rumours coming out that he got most of his knowledge from, as you say, female aristocrats, which is what I find quite interesting now, coming up as being, of course, working in toppings, and really enjoying Shakespeare throughout my childhood. It's incredible to find out, like, oh, it was actually a girl.
Yeah, so actually also not just the nobility. I think he just had this knack of absorbing language from every direction. So, and his sisters were quite instrumental as well. So there was a lot of I think just osmosis, really, that he was just picking these things up. But it's really interesting because there's been some research quite recently that shows that it was actually women in Shakespeare's day who were pushing the boundaries of English, and they were taking it forward. So by analysing, it was a couple of Swedish linguists, I think, they looked at the letters of women from around that time, because obviously they weren't published by and large. And they analysed the way that women were using you instead of thou, for example. And whereas the men who were writing were sticking largely to the kind of traditional language, it was the women who were sort of constantly biting at the edges and pushing it forward. And that's been the case. It's in some ways, sorry to get on a hobby horse here, but women are constantly blamed for the way that they speak or what they're doing with English. If you think about Valley Girl speak or up talking, you know, when you go up at the end of a sentence always, so we blame girls largely for that. We blame girls for using like and actually and all of the sort of Love Island lingo a lot. We've also, I don't know if any of you have picked up on, there was a criticism a few years ago now, vocal fry. Do you know vocal fry? When kind of girls sort of speak like this, is a slight kind of croak.
Oh yes, the Paris Hilton.
Yes, exactly that. And the criticism is that it's just an affectation, but actually we're criticised for that, but if we're too quiet, we're criticised for that as well. So in many ways, these themes of women's voices being suppressed has you know, that's kind of rippled through the ages. So that fascinated me too.
Well, it's certainly heard throughout your book. You have such strong female characters. I absolutely love them, and such a feminist book. Without inadvertently trying to be a feminist book, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
We were talking earlier, and I said, which character do you think you most identify with? And you said Martha, but I thought Alex.
Okay, so Martha is the main character of the book. She is a senior editor who has just come back from living in Berlin. She has returned to her family home, so she grew up in Oxford. Various things have happened in her family that you get to know about. And she is surrounded by a couple more editors. This is at the Clarendon English Dictionary. One is Safi, who is young, enthusiastic, curious, just loves dialects. All the lexicographers have their own little speciality. And Emma mentioned one of her favourite words that she picked up that Safi mentions at the beginning of the book, which is she spots a politician on the front page of a newspaper, and Safi says that he's looking a bit crambazzled, which is Yorkshire dialect for being prematurely aged from excess drinking, which I love. So that's Safi, who's just full of everything. And then you've got Martha, as I say. And then Alex is the older one of the group. She is sassy, she's savvy, she's very composed, but she's got a hinterland as well. And then finishing off the group is Simon, who has been at the press for a very long time, hasn't quite been promoted as he would have liked. He's really interested in this sort of vocabulary of smells and sounds and that kind of thing, and taste. So, so that's the 4 of them.
Did you have anyone in mind for Simon?
Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
No, that's all right.
So, who am I like? Martha.
Martha.
I had to struggle very hard to make Martha less like me, because I was told by a couple of writer friends to write what you know, hence the Clarendon English Dictionary. It's set in Oxford, where I live. Martha loves Germany, lived in Germany for a while. She lives in her head. She's a complete daydreamer, which is me. She has kind of conversations with herself about what she should do. That's me as well. Where she's different, though, Emma, is that she doesn't worry about things. I am a total worrier, and she's not. So I think I was aspiring to be more like Martha in that respect. And I hope there's a bit of Alex in me.
Oh, definitely.
Alex has been through stuff. She's come out the other side. She's got this quite interesting side hustle going on, which you will discover in the book. And I would like to be more Alex. I don't think I want to be more Simon, though. But I don't know. There are parts of Simon that I like.
He has fantastic shirt selections.
He has good shirts. Yes. In the first scene, we talk about his hibiscus. Anyway, he's got a shirt on with the hibiscus motif. He does have a good line in shirts, you're right.
He does. He reminds me of what I said earlier, a Brighton dad.
Yes.
Like very much that in his persona and his dress, basically. I really fell in love with all of the characters, basically, immediately. I fell into Martha. I enjoyed, I don't know so much in the book because I've got your proof and I feel very privileged for that. When you switch perspectives over to Alex and Zoe, and I get right into their heads, and you write the generations so wonderfully well.
That's really nice to know as well. Yeah, thank you for that. I had the most brilliant editor for this book, I have to say, and I'm so grateful to her, because I really didn't know how to plot a novel, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I've written almost 20 non-fiction books now, but I knew that wasn't really going to help me when it came to this book, other than the sort of practice of writing things, because the plotting, especially in a novel with mystery and crime in it, is fiendishly hard. So I had brilliant, support on that. But the one thing my editor did say is, don't make all the characters too nice, because I think I just wanted to like all of them all the time. And she said, no, nobody is perfect. So again, there was a bit of kind of clenching my teeth and thinking, okay, I have to give them a few downsides here. But yeah, hopefully they're not, I mean, they're flawed, but hopefully they're still likeable.
Oh, they're completely likeable, and the flaws make them more likeable.
Okay, good.
There's an example of an argument that happens between Alex and Simon, and they go at each other, and Martha says, "Oh, stop it now! Like, let's just go to HR about this." And then there's a quiet moment, and then Alex says, "Well, actually, okay." And there's a sort of in lieu of an apology, and it's so wonderful how they all the dominoes sort of fall into that moment, and it just made me fall in love with them even more.
Oh, thank you. That's really nice to hear. Simon's sort of simmering anger sometimes. I think we've all met someone who haven't had the cards dealt to them in life that they deserve, and sometimes they remain sunny and optimistic, and sometimes it just eats away at them, and I think with Simon maybe a bit the latter. Yeah.
To go back to within the plot of your book, there are many puzzles that we have to solve, and you end up solving them with them, which is brilliant, because in a lot of crimes it's sort of solved for you there, black and white, and sort of like, oh, and there we are, and this sort of happened, is one of my favourite things about the book. And obviously the play with words within it, and Simon's main wonderful characteristic being that he's really good at crosswords.
Yes. And I have a couple of friends who they actually compile crosswords, and they were brilliant at sort of, being there if I wanted to bounce something off them, because I think some of the puzzles in the book are probably not going to be immediately solved by the reader, which is why I wanted to bring in their basically the team get together in the dictionary department and they put everything up on this whiteboard and they kind of attack it all together. And you discover things about them as they're trying to solve this puzzle. So it wasn't always designed to be, can the reader get there first? It was more that kind of collaborative idea of someone getting one bit and another getting another, and trying to choose a different model for each puzzle as well, a different sort of format for each puzzle. That was quite entertaining.
It really was. It was absolutely incredible. They were so complicated at some point that I was getting lost within them. I was like, okay. And you asked me earlier, did you have a dictionary out? I said, I did not, but I had Google. I was typing away going, help me.
Okay, interesting. And did Google help?
No.
Oh, okay. There's one clue towards the end where Google will really be your friend.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'll have to go back and do it again. To round off with all the characters, I really enjoyed the character of Jonathan, like the glamour of his character.
Yeah.
Jonathan being the head of
consultant
editor.
Yes.
Apologies.
No, he's fine. He's a consultant editor who's essentially in charge of how Shakespeare is reflected in the dictionary. And he's very glamorous. He has regular TV programmes. He writes books. How to be more Shakespearean, how to be more sort of inventive. And he has an incredibly glamorous family. And but there are cracks, as there are with everybody. So it was. Again, I had Hugh Grant in mind when I was when I was doing Jonathan, because he can be notoriously wicked. Especially, he's had some quite evil roles recently, hasn't he? But also incredibly charismatic.
Yes, he's especially wicked in Paddington.
Yes, oh yes. I loved his cameo in the recent one, if you've seen that.
Which one?
In the very recent, yes.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay, he's got a little cameo in that. But yeah, he's just, you can't help but like him, whilst also finding him quite dastardly, I think. Yeah.
Other than struggling with plot, being first novel, did you have any other struggles that you were going through when you were writing this one?
Well, time was a big thing, because unlike my non-fiction books, I can sort of dive in and out, and it's a bit like writing a dictionary entry, because things are complete nuggets in themselves, even if there are lots of threads running through. But obviously when you're writing a novel, there's a whole momentum behind you. So I found that quite frustrating with my schedule if I couldn't keep going as I wanted to. But it did make me laugh, because I did an interview with a magazine, I think, before the book came out. And she said, well, how did you find the time to write this novel, in your busy lifestyle? And I said, well, we do have time in between countdown recordings. And by that, I meant we record Countdown for 3 days in a row. We do 15 shows in those 3 days, so 5 shows a day. And then we have a week or two at home, and then we come back. And that's what I meant, was that in the week or two in between. But she thought I was writing them in the countdown breaks, like in the 15-second ad breaks. And so I thought, God, any proper writer is going to be, looking at that thinking, oh, these blooming people think they can come and write a novel in 2 minutes. Anyway, so finding the time. So it did mean I have not had a proper weekend for a very, very long time. But that's fine. I do love getting lost in that world, and I know that's such a cliche, but that is the joy of writing, is, and also if I did get stuck, so I had days where I literally couldn't do more than about 100 words. I just went for a walk, and walking is where I came up with the title. I was walking with my friend Reb, and we were going through, I was just bouncing my plot ideas off her, and I said, yeah, but if we do that, then they'll be guilty by definition. And we both stopped and thought, that's it. So I hadn't even written the book then. And if there was anything really gnarly eating away at me, I would just go for a walk and not think about it at all. But somehow it would just sort of unravel in my head. So that was a really good tip as well.
Sometimes when you take space away from something, it just immediately falls into clarity.
It's funny, isn't it, how that works? Yeah.
I was thinking actually as well, like, how did you do it? What was the countdown? I was thinking, like, when did you have the time to do this?
Yes, so it's not live.
No.
So I don't think that's the secret, really, because I think most people know Pointless, for example. I think they do 3 or 4 weeks of just show after show after show. So that is how quiz shows tend to get recorded. With the comedy version, we do 2 very long shows of an evening. So we start at 6 and we finish about midnight for that one. But it's fine. We get lots of, quite often, the Jimmy scenes involve really nice food and occasional drink. So we're well catered for. It's a good gig.
That's good.
Yeah.
And to put the salacious rumours to bed, you have not left.
Where are you going with that?
you have not left Countdown.
Oh, no. So we were talking about this on the way. So I have had a podcast with Giles Brandreth, who you might have seen recently. He came here. For 5 years, and we stopped this year. We finished it, which was very sad, but we just both had so much to do. I had a new Radio 4 show. He's got this tour. So with great sadness, we stopped doing that after 5 years. And the tabloids, in their mischief, decided to go with the headline above a picture of me, Rachel and Colin on Countdown that said, "Countdown star bids emotional farewell." And it was me essentially saying on the podcast that Giles and I were finishing the podcast, but they made it look as if I had left Countdown. So I've had so many people say, "I'm so sorry you've left," or "Is it true?" or "Good riddance," or whatever. And no, I have not left Countdown. I have been doing it for so long, and I'll hopefully do it for a bit longer.
Well, it was going to be one of the first questions I asked you. So, wow, Susie, that's incredible. You're going to go, head, what's the words?
Headlong into novel writing.
Yeah, yes. Headlong into novel writing, that's the words I'm looking for.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, that's so incredible, but no.
No, I'm still going with Countdown because it is, it's my first love, really. I mean, it's been joyful. I've been doing it for 30 years now, 31 years actually. I wasn't full-time at the beginning. I was one of many, but I have been full-time for 2 decades or more. And yeah, it would take a lot of me to give that up. I mean, they'll probably literally push me off. It is funny, actually, the way newspapers do things, because you've just reminded me of, I did a comedy podcast with Kathy Burke, which is a comedy. Kathy Burke is a comedian, and it was called, the podcast is called Where There's a Will, There's a Way, I think. And essentially, it is a comedic imagining of how you would like your funeral to be. It sounds quite dark, but actually it's a really lovely thing, because it can be either serious or sort of, just quite funny. And Kathy asked me, who would be your pallbearers? And I said, well, of course, all the comedians off 8 out of 10 Cats. And then I just quipped, but it will be very heavy because all 20 volumes of the Oxford English Dictionary will be in there. And all the papers the next day was saying, Susie Dent wants to be buried with 20 volumes of the OED. And then there were opinion columns from funeral directors who were sick of people asking for strange things. But also, I jokingly said, she said, if you came back to haunt anyone, where would you go? So I said, of course, I will go to the Countdown studio and haunt that. But I won't have any legs because no one ever sees them. And anyway, we were just having fun. That was the other thing they reported, that I was going to go back and haunt the Countdown studio. So anyway, that's my future. But yes, the strangest things get into the papers sometimes.
If you did haunt them, would the Countdown music just start at random points?
Yes, exactly. And I could even make the clock go all the way round. That would be quite good.
Well, speaking of the future, are we to expect a new...
I can't back out now. But no, I'm really actually looking forward to it. I've got an idea. I've got a title as well, and none of which I can divulge. But it will still be set in Oxford, and it will involve many of the same characters, and they will be, a little bit further along in their lives. And watch this space, definitely.
That's very exciting.
Oh, well, yeah, hopefully. A lot of pressure. I
very much want to know more about all the characters and potentially a prequel, if we could maybe.
Yes. I know. That was someone suggested that to me today, actually, and it was such a lovely idea. So who knows? It's just a lovely thing to be given the opportunity to write them. And, it was quite terrifying. The first 2 weeks after publication is you just are terrified by reviews, etc. But luckily, it's been a lovely thing. So I'm hoping the second one will be just as nice.
Oh, it definitely will be, and your publicist will be hearing from you very quickly.
Oh, good. Oh, well, thank you for that.
Well, when this book came out, so I had my manager be like, Emma, Susie Dent, now. I would like Susie Dent right now.
It's a joy to be here, and I'm sorry if you booked the cathedral. I think there was a bit of a change of plan, wasn't there? So thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate that. I didn't know, not sure what happened there, but I'm really pleased that you could come.
Well, like, how are you finding Ely? It's I think it's almost like a miniature Oxford.
Isn't it gorgeous? And it's so Christmassy. Yes, well, I haven't seen enough of it, but the view of the cathedral all lit up is absolutely gorgeous. So, and also, a very kind man led me from my car to your bookshop. So you've got very nice citizens as well. So I'm very impressed so far.
The loveliest of people live in Ely. I recently moved in myself and I've been really enjoying it here too.
The thing I really knew about Ely, first and foremost, was St Audrey and St Audrey laces. You know about these?
Tell us all.
Okay, well, I hope this is all to do with the cathedral. So there was an abbey here, which was set up by St Etheldreda. And she was called St Audrey as well, as a kind of nickname. And she died of an affliction of the throat. And because she had liked fine scarves and everything, before she entered religious services, she thought that the affliction of her throat was because she liked finery and jewellery and things, that it was some kind of retribution for not taking God seriously enough. And anyway, once she died, she was commemorated through St Audrey laces at the market here. And St Audrey laces, these beautiful pieces of lace. But over time, as happens, rather sadly, they became a bit shoddy and a bit cheap and cheerful. And so St Audrey lace, eventually, because people said it very quickly, became tawdry lace, and that's where we get the adjective tawdry from. It's from St Audrey, St Etheldreda.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, that's the thing I knew about Ely before.
Look, you've taught us all something.
Yeah, that's good.
A word that's come straight from Ely. That's absolutely amazing.
Tawdry is from here.
Are there any others?
Sorry, it's not a great one to come from here, is it, really? But anyway, it had an interesting beginning.
That is very interesting. Do you know of any others that are from the local area?
No, not etymologically. I'm not sure I do, but there must be. It's actually very rare, and I say this in the book. It's very rare to be able to pinpoint the exact word or exact moment or place a phrase or a word was born. It's really difficult. So, as lexicographers, we're able to usually locate or pinpoint the right decade, certainly the right century, usually the right decade, very occasionally the right year. But I think the example I give in my book is stealing someone's thunder. Which is, I absolutely love the etymology of this, and apologies if you follow me on social media because I bang on about this one, but we do know the exact moment when that was born, and it was February the 5th, 1709, when a playwright critic called John Dennis put on a production of his own play, which was called Appius in Virginia, and apparently was very boring. But it did have one thing going for it, which he had invented a machine that replicated the sound of thunder. And I think it involved a sheet of metal that someone would strike very vigorously, and the effect was quite dramatic. But despite this, the play closed after quite a short run, and the production that followed his was the Scottish play. I never know whether I can say it in the theatre or not. And the witches scene came about. John Dennis was sitting in the audience, thinking he would support this production, even though it had replaced his. And from the stage, he heard booming out the sound of his own thunder-making machine. And he was so incensed, he stood up, and with the two accounts of this from the night by people who were there, he stood up and he shouted at the stage, "Damn them, they will not let my play run, but they steal my thunder." And that's where we get that one from. So it's ones like that give me goosebumps, because we can absolutely say this was the moment when it was born.
That is incredible. I was about to say, well, not so much the more modern words that have been coming up. I think it's Simon, like the character, talks about Riz being a word. Like,
Yes,
short
putting
for-
on the Riz.
Putting on the Riz.
Yes.
I was trying to think of more words earlier that the youth have been using.
Well, I mean, Oxford's word of the year was 2 words, strictly speaking, but it's brain rot, which is not new at all, but that was essentially the sort of mind mush that we feel when we're scrolling through social media or just on our phones all the time. And ironically, it started on TikTok, really, this sort of phase, which is the very place where you find brain rot.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, there's Riz, there was also Delulu.
Delulu is the Salulu.
Delusional. There was, well, I think demure came back, didn't it?
Demure.
Very
Yeah,
demure,
it's
very mindful. So, yes, there's quite a lot that, especially from the past, that new generations are kind of pushing back into currency.
One of my younger colleagues used the word tweaked earlier today to describe me being cross about something.
Oh, I've
And
not heard that.
No, tweaked, that's a new one.
Yeah,
apparently.
like sort of peaked, but with a tweak.
Yeah, so it's like, and I thought that's a very gentle word to use about someone being quite cross. He said, "Are you tweaking?" I said,
It sounds like twerking. I would imagine that you would twerk.
Well, maybe that's what I heard. I went,
Twerking while you tweak.
No, I do love how words have changed. I think I'm getting a bit older now because I was like, I don't recognise any of these words these youth are using. And I've been using the word youth quite a lot recently.
Well, that's the whole point, though, is that slang is the fastest moving area of language we have because it's designed to go over our heads if we are over 30, whatever. And the moment that parents or authorities or older people scale the wall, then it has to just run on again because otherwise they won't have their own, their own language.
True.
So it's been like that for generations, I have to say. Slang was one of the first categories of language ever to be collected in a dictionary, and that was criminal slang, the language of the underworld. It's criminal underworld.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
The language of the underworld.
I know it sounds quite sort of Greek, doesn't it? But yes, so it's always been with us, and a lot of Countdown guests are often surprised that a word is accepted on Countdown because they say, but that's slang, what's that doing in the dictionary? But actually, very often it's the slang we need to look up because we don't understand it.
Definitely. Do you have a favourite slang word?
What's that?
Do you have a favourite one?
Oh, do I have a favourite one? My goodness. No, do you know what? I have learned not to say it. I had to do an interview on BBC Breakfast about this very subject, the slang of Gen Z. And they asked me, I don't know if anyone here will know what I mean by skibbity.
Oh,
Skibbity
yes,
toilets.
Skibbity toilets, yeah. My brother.
Anyway, I said this, and my teenager has not forgiven me yet because she has been teased about it at school. This clip of me going skibbity, skibbity, when clearly it's not a word I understand because I think it can mean anything. It can mean good, it can mean bad, it can mean, and even they don't know what it means. They just throw it in. So it's definitely not that one. I think my favourite one just used to be cool. Because cool is an example of a word that is much older than it seems. So we first recorded it in 19th century public school slang to mean the opposite of, something that is hot, something that is good. Then it flew away again, and then during the jazz era in the 1940s, Charlie Parker, etc., it suddenly became very big again. And I thought this was the one word that every generation could use and still be quite cool. But now even that gets an eye roll. If you're over 30 and you say cool. So I genuinely don't know what we can say and not to be censored for it. But maybe we'll just carry on with very demure.
Very demure.
Very demure, very mindful. Yeah.
Let me just check on the time. Do you know what? I think it might be time for questions.
Oh, that's my favourite bit.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to send around a roaming mic.
Okay.
And if anyone wants to ask a question, put your hand up and I will. Here we go. Let's go. There we go. There you are.
Thank you. Is this working? Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. So I know it must be different for every single word, but could you summarise generally the process of discovering the origin of an obscure word or phrase?
Yes, such an excellent question. it essentially goes back to building a linguistic picture of a word in its time. So if you can, so I mentioned the army of readers that helped with the Oxford English Dictionary. So, the Oxford English Dictionary was one of the first crowd-funded or crowd-sourced, really, projects that we have, in that there are people right across the globe who are reading texts, coming across a word, knowing its date, and sending in the record of that word so that we can not just get the chronology of it, but also get the context of it, get the idea of its environment, its companions, which words it's being used with, etc. And from that picture, you can very often then, I say very often actually, not often enough, but get the inspiration behind that word, you know, what led to its creation. I mean, with so many words, they are simply riffs on existing words, or we know that they came to us from Latin and Greek, particularly then through French, or that they were Germanic originally. So there are etymologists who will know the etymology of that Germanic word. They will take it all the way back to this, you sound like you know all about this, but this reconstructed language called Proto-Indo-European, which was sort of mother of so many of the languages that you will find today, that we have entirely reconstructed, because by looking at words that are common across lots of different languages, we can posit a theory as to what that original one looked like, and where that possibly came from. And there are etymologists who will go all the way back to that, know what it means, and then that will give you a pretty close etymology of the word. When it comes to slang, it is much more difficult. So a good friend of mine is Jonathan Green. I don't know if you know Jonathan. He's the slang meister of his age, really. So he's written the OED of slang. And with the way that slang works, it is not just very tribal, but it's also quite hidden, it's quite secret, it's deliberately designed to keep outsiders out. Its etymology is also quite hidden very often. Even slang, the word slang, we don't really know where that comes from, but you know. So there are some very basic words in English where we don't actually know the etymology. I mentioned some of them in the novel, actually. Dog is a famous one. We have no idea where the word dog came from. So that detective work still goes on. I could bore you for hours with sort of other mechanisms, but are you quite interested in etymology? Yeah. You should. Are you involved in that area at all?
I'm not, but I really should be.
You should be. It sounds like you should be. It is absolutely fascinating, and there are lots of books out there. There's a couple actually written by OED lexicographers and etymologists who will take you into it a little bit more. And if you are, well, I ought to just do a tweet about it actually for people who are interested. But I have to say I rely heavily on the work of other people as well. I sometimes don't do all the detective work myself by any means. I rely on all the people who've gone before, who've done all the digging. Yeah, thank you.
There's another one over here. Yeah, do you mind passing that down, please?
Thank you. If when writing a fictional novel and you get stuck, writer's block, would you suggest writing a bit of poetry, writing a short story? Because that you learn new words, but also you cut out unnecessary words.
Yes, that's interesting. Are any words unnecessary? They probably are, actually. Well, I've already sort of touched on how walking really helped me. So actually, I would say two things worked for me. One is literally getting outside, no matter what the weather, and just forgetting about it all, and just raising my heartbeat and just, you know, completely losing myself in that, and in that process of walking. And the other one was writing longhand, because I find when I write at a computer, I self-edit a lot. I just go back over the same line and sort of polish it. Whereas with longhand, I don't look at all at what I've written until the end of that chapter or that section. Then I can write it up and edit it at that point. But it allows me to allows things to flow much more easily. And if I could have written the whole novel longhand, I would have done. But the honest answer is I can't always read my own writing. And especially if I'm writing fast, and I didn't want to lose something that meant something to me in the moment. So, but if I was stuck on something, that's what I turned to, was pad and paper, pad and pencil. Thank you for the question.
Congratulations on your recent MBE. How did you feel when you learned about it?
That's really kind, thank you. My first reaction was I was quite sad because my dad died last year and he would have loved it. So I felt quite sad for him, very pleased for my mum, because I think it meant more to them than to any of us in the family, actually. I think the thing I was most proud of was that it was services to language and literature. That I was really touched by that, because I've never wanted to be untethered from what I do. I think maybe that's why I was quite reluctant to go on Countdown for a long time, because I just wanted to stay with words, really, and language. So that I was really pleased with that. And yes, it was quite thrilling, actually. And I went what day? So just last Tuesday, I got it at Windsor Castle, and it was lovely. Got it from the King, and it was it was a really special day. Brought my mum along, and thank you for remembering.
Thank you, Susie. I wonder what's happened to the word many. These days I only ever seem to hear multiple instead. Do you see a difference in meaning? What's going on here?
Do you know, all the changes to language, that isn't one that I've noticed so much. Do you think it's because multiple sounds... I wonder if it's part of linguistic inflation, whereby everything is being supersized and bigged up, and nobody can be just a hero now. They have to be a superhero, and anyone who holds the door open for you is a star, or gets you a coffee. And we just have to sort of, just make everything sound much louder. I suppose there's such a cacophony of noise around us that we have to be heard. And bigging up our language is part of that, possibly. So I wonder if that's what's going on. A lot of people notice that one. Multiple issues rather than many issues. I suppose the only difference in nuance to my ear, but I'm not sure this would be substantiated by the dictionary, is that if you say multiple issues, there are multiple issues with your car, that suggests to me lots of distinct things, whereas there are many issues with your car. Actually, I don't know. As a lexicographer, I should have a proper answer to that. Yeah, I'm not sure if there is. Do you see a distinction in it? Do you see a distinction between many and multiple?
Not really.
No. So does it annoy you?
A bit.
Yes.
I'm a mathematician, so multiple takes me down that route.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that one, actually.
Perhaps it's just me.
No, it may not be. I don't think it's particularly US English, because that's the other bugbear, of course, that people have, is that we are somehow witnessing a new infestation of American English, which is not true, by the way. Most of the things that we think of as American English were ours anyway. I could go on about that subject at length. Sidewalk, fall, all of those were ours. Aluminum, that was ours as well. Shakespeare's about realise with a Z, as do I. But I'm not sure that one is specifically American, but I will listen out for it. Thank you.
I was very interested in your opening remarks in the discussion about the importance of women and their contribution to the evolution of language.
Yeah.
I wonder if perhaps rewriting the life of Dr. Johnson as Dr. Johnson as a woman might have altered things in terms of the development of the dictionary.
Interesting. I mean, much as it is with many scientific discoveries, there were many women behind the scenes who don't get the credit. So it's a really interesting reimagining, actually, of the way that we do position things. And I think Shakespeare is such a prime example of that. that we choose a figurehead. I mean, quite completely understandably and rightly in Shakespeare's case, but the way that women are represented in language is also very interesting. So if you look particularly again at slang through the ages, you will find that women are the object of discussion rather than the subject. So they are not the ones speaking, they are being spoken about. And what is very sad and very noticeable is that very often attributes like promiscuity will be ascribed to them. So I would give you one example. The word hussy began as a completely neutral term for a housewife. It's short for the Old English huswife, housewife. And a wife was a woman. A wife just meant, so fishwife was a woman who sold fish. That was the original meaning of wife. But because of the way that we view women, they're either sort of very pure and faultless, or they are promiscuous and sort of sordid. So housewife went off in one way and hussy went to sort of embrace the other. And you will find those two directions throughout English. So the first harlots were men, strangely. The first to be buxom were men, because it actually meant obedient. It comes from a German word. But they became packed with all these stereotypical associations of women and went off in very, very different directions. So it is sometimes quite depressing looking at how women are sort of portrayed in the dictionary. And as for the writers of it, I mean, if you look at the OED team now, there are so many fantastic women, as there have been in the past. So it's a really interesting point. Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Having just been through it yourself, what's the one bit of advice you'd give to someone trying to write their first novel?
Oh, gosh. I would say go for it, because I didn't, obviously, right at the beginning, and so I wasted a bit of time there and doubted myself a lot. And I would just say, even if you write it only for yourself, there is such joy to be had in it. And it became, for me, this little world that was uniquely mine, long before I shared it with anybody, and just a little space that I could lose myself in. I mean, I've always done that anyway with the dictionary. I've always sort of, as I said about Martha, my main character, I do just live in my head. And it gave me even greater chance to do that. But also, lovely thing about it, I would recommend, if you are writing your first novel, follow the advice that I was given, which is write about what you know, but also place that you know or would like to know, because I've set it in Oxford. I went to Oxford and then I left for a very long time. I went to live in Germany and in the States for a while. And when I came back to Oxford, I was quite nervous to go and visit the old haunts, my favourite places, because I didn't want to ruin them in my imagination. They had been so precious to me. It's a bit like rereading your childhood, favourite childhood books. You almost don't want to go there because you think it will ruin the memory forever. But one of the things that the book made me do was go back to those places and not just rediscover those and kind of redefine them for me, but also discover so many other fantastic places as well. So I would suggest to choose a really good venue, assuming it's not so much, well, even if it is a fantasy novel, actually. Choose somewhere that you love or would love to find out more about, and in some ways that gives you the perfect gateway. That would be my top tip. Well, one of my top tips. Thank you.
There's another one over here. Do you mind passing that down, please?
Thank you for the introduction to your book. My appetite is whetted.
Oh, thank you.
My question is about spelling. Spelling matters a lot to me.
Mm.
Correct spelling, as I see it. But I sometimes wonder whether it really matters and how much language changes anyway with the spelling of words.
Oh, no.
All right, hang on there we go, you got me back. Sorry, so whether spelling really matters because of the way English evolves, or, yeah. Yes, I have the same conflict or conflicting emotions about this, I suppose. because I think spelling does matter, but I don't think arbitrary rules are particularly helpful. So I wrote an article for the I paper actually this weekend about the sort of gripes and concerns that I hear very often about English spelling and other aspects of the language that are going downhill, they're going to the dogs, the internet has ruined everything, etc. And I find reassurance in the fact that we have always been saying this. So I've been talking about Shakespeare, and he was so roundly criticised for mucking about with language and for producing words like laughable, you know, and his critics would say, it's laugh-atable, what are you talking about? It should be laughable. He experimented in lots of different ways, and again, talking about American spelling, in his first folio, you will find far more American spellings as we would see them now than British spellings. Having said that, there is wonderful etymology behind spellings, the way that we spell things very often, all the silent letters that kind of make spelling probably the trickiest educational journey any of us will ever have to make. They all have a story to them. So the H in ghost, one of my favourite stories, was put there by a typesetter who was Flemish, who worked for William Caxton, and he saw the Old English ghost, G-O-S-T, and because his native Flemish had an H in it, he just thought, that doesn't look right. So he lobbed an H into our word, and it stayed there ever since. So very often, these silent letters are the footprint of one single person in history who will forever remain anonymous. And they're sort of little hiccups of time, which I love. So I love the stories behind them. And the other reason why I think spelling is important is it enables us to appreciate the beauty of a message without tripping up over something that distracts us. So communication is key, not just in kind of getting sound bites or very sort of plain language across, but beautiful language as well. And I think if we're reading something really gorgeous and there's a spelling mistake, that's all that we focus on. So it's important for that reason, not for old rules that we don't have any rules that make sense. The I before E rule, except after C, it is a rubbish rule. It doesn't, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of exceptions to that rule. So I think we can throw all of those out, but concentrate on getting the message across in as articulate a way as possible. But equally, spelling will change over time. And I think that's inevitable, and that, you know, punctuation is changing just as much, only perhaps less overtly so. We're losing semicolons, much to my regret. We are replacing them with dashes. The full stop is now, certainly on social media and in some contexts, it's actually almost aggressive if you put a full stop in a particular place. So I think everything is subject to change, but I would agree with you, it does matter, but perhaps for other reasons than people expect. Thank you.
One more over here.
Okay.
Hi, Susie. Thank you for what you just said. We are kindred spirits when it comes to semicolons. We must champion them and cling to them. Yes, absolutely. That's not my question. I was fascinated to hear what you said earlier, that you were asked to write a crime mystery novel, that it wasn't that you'd thought, oh, I really want to kind of be, you know, the new Agatha Christie or whatever. No. So I was wondering, I mean, do you enjoy reading crime and mystery?
I do, yes. So you mentioned Agatha Christie. I mean, I just grew up with Agatha Christie, like so many of us. And having reread quite a lot of her novels, I think she's surprisingly dark. I sort of think quite often we think of Agatha Christie as cosy crime, but actually it's very complex sometimes. And as I say, just not as breezy as you sort of might imagine. So yes, I do. One of the things that I had to do, however, while I was writing was stop reading all crime novels, because I was so scared I would just be diverted into someone else's, you know, brilliant idea. So I would read literary fiction. I remember reading The Goldfinch and almost giving up. Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch, for anyone who's not read it, is the most brilliant, brilliant book. And she writes so beautifully that I just thought, what is the point? I will never be able to write like this. So there is danger in reading when you're trying to write, ironically. But I do really like a good crime novel, and I also like crime I listen to a lot of audios, particularly as I'm falling asleep, so I will listen to books on Audible quite often as I'm falling asleep then. But I definitely would not have picked it had it not been suggested to me. I think I would have fancied myself to write something very daydreamy and sort of drifty. And when I was at school, I was always being told off for actually overblown language. So I still feel that is in me. I have to rein myself in. I wouldn't have chosen the genre, but I'm really glad it was suggested to me because, as I say, I discovered all these parallels between the work that a lexicographer does and the work that a detective does in terms of looking. We talk about evidence all the time as lexicographers. We talk about clues, we talk about footprints, and it kind of came together in ways that I hadn't expected, but it definitely came from outside. And
That's
sometimes
great.
I think that's the best way. Sometimes we don't know what we want until someone suggests it.
And I'm so glad they did, because it's lovely to read a really intelligent, really well thought out, very clever, but also very readable. Your prose is beautiful. Thank you. So it was a really great mystery novel. It was wonderful. A real treat.
You just
And
give
I
me a
look
shiver
forward to
by
the
saying
sequel.
that. Thank you very much. That's really lovely to hear. And also, together with semicolons, bring back the adverb. Adverbs on their way out. Drive safe. I'm good. I like adverbs. We'll finish on that note.
Yes.
That's such a nerdy me thing to say.
No, but I
Long live
thoroughly-
the adverb.
I thoroughly agree, though. Like, I was looking at my colleague over there because she said, "Oh, why have you put a semicolon and use a dash?" And I said, "No, I want my semicolon."
Yeah,
But
hold on to those.
what a lovely note to end on. Thank you so much for being
Thank you
here.
for having
have been
me.
incredible, and it's been such a lovely evening.
Likewise, thank you. And thank you for coming. And remember Tawdry. Yes, it belongs to you. Thank you.